I heard the Lord say, "It's not about what's on your to-do list or vision board, or how you'll carry out these tasks. It's about living and communing with the Holy Spirit." As we briefly discussed, I was practically raised in a church. Sundays were spent at church from around 9 o'clock a.m. to 6 o'clock p.m. My mother was an usher, and my father was involved in a variety of duties at church. We were usually attending church, and I grew up in that setting. I was in the youth group and took part in everything. Around high school, I couldn't wait to be 18 and move out so I wouldn't have to go to church anymore. It appeared to me to be dreary, monotonous, and unrealistic. Certain things I observed were overdone in the traditional Pentecostal movement, and I just did not have the revelation that I possess now. I'd always had a concept of the Holy Spirit, but it was from a limited perspective. I knew God existed, and that He loved me, but because the message that God took care of your sin was so painful to hear, I assumed that grace meant I could live my life as I pleased and worship God later. I planned to go out into the world, live my life, and pursue my goals of music and dancing. I grew up performing ballet and singing in choruses and at school. My parents raised me to think that I could do anything through Christ, who strengthens me and encourages me to pursue my objectives. They were a little lenient in that regard, allowing me to roam. However, I had no idea I had praying parents, fervently praying parents. One strange thing happened. A high school acquaintance emailed me an audition notice for the Florida Marlins dance squad. It was an open call for dancers, akin to cheerleaders, but with more rigorous dance instruction. I was 17, but they let me audition because I was talented enough. That audition was a watershed moment for me because it exposed me to the world and earned me admiration simply by being in that environment. This was in Miami, a much more open city where age was no barrier as long as you were a gorgeous female. Opportunities started to emerge. Because I could sing, I met producers and studio owners and started recording music, creating songs, and performing. I developed a passion for composing, producing, and performing music. It felt a lot better than performing in church. I eventually began recording several recordings and playing at Miami Beach's local clubs. I met people with connections, and eventually, I was signed by an independent label. At the time, I was in a relationship with the independent label's owner, who was also my boyfriend. I trusted him to look after me, but in actuality, he took advantage of my abilities. Despite my youth and inexperience, I eventually ascended the high and difficult ladder. Universal Republic eventually signed me to a recording deal. They signed an indie label, but it was for me. It was a pretty intriguing contract. I was working on singles, had songs on the radio, and performed as an opener for Nicki Minaj. I was performing for A-list celebrities and on radio tours, and I was having a great time. Regardless, I felt like I was disobeying God. I assumed He'd forgive me because that's what He does, right? I recall an occasion in which an aeroplane fell swiftly for around 5 seconds. A hailstone had shattered the pilot's windscreen, causing the plane to plummet rapidly. When we got off the plane, the windscreen was absolutely white. We'd have gone down if it had broken. In instances like that, I found myself repenting and pleading with the Lord for forgiveness. Despite these close calls, I continued to believe that I could serve God later. I was ignorant, assuming that I could live my life my way, and then turn to God when I was ready. I frequently heard a small voice tell me not to go to certain areas, not to hang out with certain individuals, and not to drink or smoke certain substances. But I ignored it because I valued my way of life too much. The more I denied God, the more I invited the devil into my life. I remember being in studio sessions with huge celebrities who were snorting coke. I was around it, but I never did it. I wrote songs with blasphemous lyrics because it was trendy to be edgy. Many lyrics and songs are critical of God's kingdom and His love for humanity. During writing sessions, I experienced intense fear. I believed the Lord was warning me that there were devils around, but I ignored His voice because I wanted to pursue my dreams. However, God's hand shielded me from some crazy situations. For example, I was present in rooms when friends were being assaulted, but it never happened to me. Strange, insane things happened to my peers and ladies around me, but I was safe. It never happened to me, and I now understand that my parents' prayers truly protected me while I was out there in the darkness. I wanted to study music in my own way because I didn't want to sing old church hymns or play a traditional role in church. That was simply due to my ignorance. We were taking a break from recording my first album while I was working with this producer. This producer, who has worked with well-known business figures, approached me and said, "Hey, you know that if you sold your soul to the devil, you could have instant fame tomorrow." He made certain to separate me from my team, leaving just the two of us. That moment, I sensed a level of discernment that I had never felt before. It seemed as if he had made a mistake in his career and was attempting to utilize me to attain his objectives without selling his own soul. He proposed that if I sold my soul, we could both achieve great things. Suddenly, I sank to the ground, like if a tremendous weight had fallen on me. I began weeping and pleading with the Lord for forgiveness as I realized how deeply I had sunk into disobedience. As I laid on the floor, wailing and begging the Lord for forgiveness, I realized the man had also fallen and was sitting with his head bowed. His statements were filled with conviction, which struck me hard. Following that encounter, I resolved to make adjustments. I tried to change my behavior by not displaying too much skin or using swear words in order to follow my dreams in a more honorable manner, but I was still not entirely dedicated. About a year later, I had advanced in my career. I did not have an agreement with Universal Republic at the time, but I did the next year. I had a new high-profile manager and was meeting with key industry figures. I felt like I was on the verge of success, only one yes away from being a major star. I didn't realize the Lord was closing the doors for a cause. I had a trip planned to Amsterdam and was dating a guy, not living properly and ignoring the Holy Spirit's unction. I had a lot of events scheduled, including concerts. Looking back, I can see how the Lord was attempting to guide me, but I was too preoccupied with my own path to listen. I believe I did, and I frequented clubs. Therefore, I am confident I went to the club that night. I was in New York and residing at my manager's small 400-square-foot studio. I was in bed with her because I couldn't afford a motel at the moment. I don't even want to call it a dream anymore. It was obviously a vision or an out-of-body experience, since I felt more alive and attentive than I do right now as I chat to you. My spirit felt everything, as if my fingertips could breathe. I was incredibly alert. It appeared like I was in space, and I could nearly hear the vibrations of objects. I'm not sure if they were beings or what, but I was certainly in the presence of the enemy rather than God. It was the earth in my head, but it didn't look like a standard globe. It appeared to be a pool, and I could see stars. In the distance, I saw what appeared to be the sun, but it wasn't. It was simply a lake of fire. I recall wondering, "Oh, am I in the spirit realm?" Then this person approached me. He was a silhouette because he wasn't lit. He was simply dark. As he approached me, I said, "Lord," unsure whether he was God or an angel. I sensed he was someone strong, but I had no idea who he was. He told me, "No, you know who this is," but he didn't say anything audible. I could feel the words. They felt like bass vibrations. I vibrated as his words pierced my soul. I knew it was Satan the instant he said it, since I wasn't living properly. I was aware that I was always rejecting God in order to do what I wanted. I was completely conscious of my sin and was saying yes to it, but no to God. So I was like, "Oh crap, did I just die? Am I going to hell?" I knew I wasn't in my body, even in my naive thinking. I knew I was in the spirit. As he replied, "You know who this is," I got overtaken with panic and began to say, "No, Jesus, please forgive me. Forgive me for lying, for cheating, and for ignoring you." I ran through the entire list of things I knew I was doing wrong. I thought I was going to hell. The horror that I felt, as well as the experience of being alienated from God, struck me the minute he stated, "You know who this is because you have a knowing." I'm not even sure how to explain it. As I was going through the list of "Lord, forgive me," he ordered me to stop talking since he seemed to have something to say. He added, "If you worship me, I will give you all of these things." He mentioned a man's name, and I truly wanted to get married and have a healthy relationship. He was saying, "I'll give you fame. I'll give you success. I'll make you the world's biggest star." As he spoke, the earth transformed into one of those crystal balls used by witches and psychics to reveal fortunes. It was showing me things as he said them, and I was staring at it, thinking, "No, I'm the daughter of Christ." When Jesus began repeating, "If you worship me," I realized I had a decision to make, and I chose the Lord in that moment for real. After I answered, "No, I'm Christ's daughter," he used the B word on me, and I hurled back. I woke up with a gasp, as if I'd just snorted.